All right, guys. So at most, we're gonna have like three more of these, counting this one. So two more after this. Hopefully, maybe I can squeeze in the last two next time. Before you watch this, if you have the AP exam today for AP Government, stop watching this. This is not for you today. You need to go and focus on the task that you have at hand, which is to do well on that AP exam. And I hope you do the same thing if you're in chemistry on Thursday or if you're in my class on Monday next week. Listen, guys, I know mine's the last one, and I know it's the one that's probably the most difficult for you because it's on Monday and school is technically out on Friday for the summer. But you put the time in for the majority of this class, not counting, of course, the last semester here, or at least the last quarter, which has been very different. But even there, you've put time in, you've put an effort in. Do what you need to do now to get a three or better on that exam. Do the best that you can. Listen, for those of you who might be stressed out about this or any of your other AP exams, know that this is probably going to be the easiest AP year that you're ever going to experience, rightfully so because of the circumstances. Instead of having to go and take an entire test, you guys are, for the most part, taking fractions of each one of these AP exams. You're taking it in the comfort of your own home, which hopefully is a blessing rather than a curse. And for the most part, everything is open note. So I mean, take advantage of the fact that all of this is kind of happening around you. I know it's not ideal. I know it's not perfect, but it can definitely. I think it can be used for your benefit. I think if like for the AP chemistry test that you guys have on Thursday, I think it's going to be easier than any AP chemistry test that they've ever given before, just because again the circumstances. So take that for what you will. Let's go ahead and pray, and we'll get started on chapter 17, hopefully finishing up module 56 today. Lord God, I just ask that you bless this group. I pray, Lord, that you help them if they are testing today or Thursday. Definitely help them, Lord, on Monday to do everything they need to do and to do it well. Lord, I just pray that you give them the energy that this sort of test demands, that you help them to think clearly and to organize their thoughts well, to write effectively, to display their knowledge, Lord, to the best of their ability. Be with them, bless them, Lord, enable them to do well, not only on my test, Lord, but all of the tests that they have here at the end of this year. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. So today we are going to be talking about infectious disease. If we're going to talk about disease, let's first highlight what a disease is, guys. We're going to go into detail, some detail, not in depth detail, but some detail on several common infectious diseases. We're not going to really spend time with non-infectious diseases because there's not a lot. There is environmental influence to that, but there's not as much as infectious disease. So that's what we're going to focus more on infectious disease today. For those of you who don't know what the difference is, an infectious disease is a disease caused by an infectious agent, some sort of pathogen, a germ. Okay. A non-infectious disease is not caused by a pathogen, and you might be scratching your head there, going, well, "What kind of disease are you talking about there?" Well, non-infectious diseases include things like cancer and heart disease and any sort of cardiovascular disease or diabetes. That's not an infectious disease. That's not something that you get from the environment in which you live. That is something that is part of your genes, your DNA. It's something you were either born with or something you developed as a result of a mutation of your DNA. So because those aren't normally impacted by the environment nearly as much, we're going to be talking more about infectious disease, which do have a tie to the environment in which you live, and that's the tie that we have here in this class. So they can be acute or chronic. Acute diseases impair you rapidly, so it's something that comes on kind of like the flu. You contract the infectious disease, and it spreads throughout your body rapidly, and it becomes an issue to you in the moment. Chronic diseases are usually non-infectious diseases, and they occur more slowly. They slowly impair your body's ability to do everyday tasks, or one part of your body to do a particular task. These can happen with infectious disease, that chronic sort of slow progression, but normally it's more of an acute reaction. All right. I'm going to try to go through this quick just so you guys don't have much to kind of like go through here. I wanted to get through some vocab here, and honestly, last year this probably would have been terms that you knew vaguely, but would have been kind of new to you. This year, you guys know what all these are. Okay, we don't talk about the plague very much, but a plague is an infection from a bacterium that is carried by fleas. The Black Plague would be an example of that, aka the Black Death. But epidemic and pandemic are terms that, again, you've probably heard. You probably heard in the past a year ago. And it was something that you kind of vaguely knew, but now it's on every news cycle that you hear about every single day. An epidemic is when a pathogen causes a rapid increase in disease. We were obviously in the midst of an epidemic, and now you probably have heard the coronavirus considered a pandemic because a pandemic is an epidemic that occurs over a large geographical area or region. And obviously, the coronavirus or COVID-19 has occurred over a large area, so we consider it to be a pandemic. But if you were ever curious, maybe this is the best time to talk about this, because maybe you were curious about what the difference between an epidemic and a pandemic were. Now you know. All right, so yeah, like when I first started reading through this chapter, the idea of like, okay, well, disease is bad, obviously, and it's something we should look at, but what is its tie? What is its relation to AP environmental science, to environmental science as a whole? I'm sorry, that picture did not turn out nearly as well as I'd like, but it kind of gives you an idea. It's because of the pathways of transmissions of those pathogens. So if we're talking about some sort of infectious disease, a pathogen is the key to that infection. You have to contract that pathogen. And how do you do that? That's from contaminated water sources, contaminated air, contaminated food, domesticated animals that come into contact with you, non-domesticated animals that come into contact with you, and of course, other humans. And for the most part, a lot of these are things that we've discussed, things like waterways, things like air, things like the way that we harvest and utilize and transport, the logistics around food. All of those things, our interaction with animals, which is completely encompassed in environmental science. All of those things are things that we have discussed in this class. They are things that are obviously that tie us to the environment in which we live. So yes, there is a connection here between this class, and the diseases that we're about to talk about. So, some infectious diseases of note, some things that we want to kind of cover. I'm going to highlight several of these kind of in this format, and then I'm going to kind of break it off, and we're going to highlight some more in a much more condensed format. So there's a few that I want to kind of give more time to, if you will. These are the big players. These are the things that are probably the most deadly around different parts of the world. They're the most common, and they are just the easiest to spread. Most of the ones that I'm about to talk about do not infect us nearly as much. Feel blessed, guys. I hope that this class, at least a little bit, has opened your eyes to just how fortunate you are, just from the sheer fact that you were born here in the United States, or at least in a westernized area. Because if you were born in other places that are not westernized, that are considered more not first world, that's kind of an old term, but still a developing country, these kind of infectious diseases are much more common. So one of them, of course, is malaria. Malaria has killed more people than almost anything on the earth. It's kind of ridiculous. It infects 350 to 500 million people per year, and it kills 1 million every single year. There's not a lot of things that kill a million people every year. Okay, there's really not. We're pretty good at it. Humans are pretty close to this, but we don't even come close to the death rates of malaria. So you might have a war that might have over 1 million deaths in a particular year, but believe it or not, there are some years where we don't kill that many people. And when I say we, I mean collectively, all people don't kill each other quite as much. And malaria doesn't really stop. Every single year, it's pretty consistent. It kills lots of people. Just to add a little layer of tragedy to this, complete tragedy, is the fact that of those 1 million deaths, most of them are children under the age of 5. And the death that results from malaria is not good. It is, It's a bad death. It really is. I don't want to go into it necessarily because it's just sad, but it is a bad death. So now here in the United States, we get a few cases. Usually, I think it's under 1,000 every year, but it's not something that we concern ourselves with. For the most part, it's been eradicated in the United States. How? It's through the control of mosquito populations, or the eradication of mosquitoes. So what do? Well, we spray DDT, which again kind of ties it back to that whole environmental problem. Like, is DDT, obviously there's issues with DDT, and it does have an impact on the environment, but if we're trying to stop 1 million deaths, or at least curb that 1 million deaths here in the United States, I don't know. Like, again, we're this odd place where I would say that if you're going to save 5 kids, spray it with DDT. Okay, I have 3 small children. Yeah, if you're going to save one of my children, spray everything with DDT. Okay. So, I'm always going to value human life above everything else. But do I think that there's an environmental aspect to this that we need to consider? Absolutely. Okay. So, and that's why I wish you guys were here so we could have this discussion. And I think everybody would probably agree that human life is the most valuable thing. It's the thing that we need to protect the most. But can we do it? Can we protect life while maybe not spraying DDT? There's ways around this. Oh, and by the way, note mosquito. I think that we call them mosquitoes because horrible world killer was just too long of a name. But you're going to see mosquito again and again when we talk about these infectious diseases. Could be one of just the most vile creatures on earth. And it's not necessarily their fault. It's just the way that they consume things. So let's talk a little bit about tuberculosis. This is still something that impacts us. It's just not as common here in the United States, again, because of our superior, really because of our wealth more than anything else, and our really good health system. I say it's really good. I know it's overpriced. I know there's problems with it, but we are the health innovators of the world still. Okay, we don't hold the title for a lot of the things that we used to hold the title for around the world, but we do hold the title for that. We are if you're sick, you want to be sick here in the United States more so than anywhere else, because we have the best medicine, we have access to it, we have the best research, and because of that, we have ways to beat back things like tuberculosis, which is a disease that each year 9 million people contract and 2 million people die of. It's no slouch. Okay, it definitely has a huge impact. So some of the symptoms, it does not seem like a super fun illness. I'm obviously joking there. Feeling weak, having night sweats, coughing up blood, not good things. Luckily, it's controlled by antibiotics, and we have a readily available supply of those antibiotics. Other places in the world are not so lucky. Okay, and then of course, this is the last one that I will highlight, sort of in this fashion, and it's a big one. HIV/AIDS. HIV obviously results in AIDS. AIDS is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. HIV is human immunodeficiency virus. And basically, most people with AIDS don't die of AIDS, just so you're aware, but it destroys the immune system so effectively that they end up dying of something like pneumonia or even the flu virus, something that you would normally get and fight off. You think about pneumonia, the only people that usually get pneumonia are like older people or very young people, so like babies. And that's because their immune systems are compromised. So if you happen to have HIV or full-blown AIDS, your immune system is so compromised that you won't be able to fight off that infection like you could now. I'm sure that I've come into contact with pneumonia before. But because my immune system, being the age that I am, is strong for the most part, I was able to fight it off. But if I was in a situation where I had, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, I might not have been able to. So this is considered an emergent infectious disease, which means it's an infectious disease that was previously not described or not common for at least the prior 20 years. So this is a fairly new disease. And you guys will find most of the ones that we talk about after this will also be emergent infectious diseases. So the way that they think that this originated, it's of course spread through sexual blood contact. Mothers and their fetuses, poor babies, had nothing to do with what occurred. And of course, the sharing of dirty needles. They believe that it originated from chimpanzees. There are parts of the world that still hunt chimpanzees and consume them for food. It's called bush meat sometimes, where they go into the jungle or forest and they will kill animals, wild animals in the forest, and consume them. And I know that sounds odd, like to consume a chimpanzee, but I mean, we consume deer. We do a very similar thing where we go out into the forest and we hunt for food, as sport, as well as for nutrition. We eat that food as well. So it's strange to us, but it's not necessarily strange to someone that lives in those areas. But you'll always find a lot of these. There's a common theme with a lot of these diseases. One is mosquitoes, and two is this contact with wild animals. So with that brings us to some more diseases. This is where I went and just kind of broke it down a little quicker. Ebola, which is caused by the Ebola virus. This is has an incredibly high death rate, probably one of the highest ones that we're going to talk about, 50 to 90%. The reason we don't know is because this is a disease that is so new, and it's only affected certain parts of the world that we don't know a lot about it, and there's no known cure for this right now. Mad cow disease is neurological disorders where prawns, which are small beneficial proteins to the brains of a cow, they mutate into deadly pathogens that slowly damage the cow's nervous system, and this can be passed to you. This was really interesting. This came about in the 90s. It really fascinated scientists simply because these prawns, this mutation of a particular protein that was normally found in the brain anyway, is a new classification of pathogen. Okay, because if you consume this cow meat, you can actually develop this disease. What they found, though, is it's much more likely to be transmitted to another cow through the consumption of that meat, which I know sounds really weird, but there was a time back in the 90s where it was a common practice. It's not a common practice nearly as much now. I can't say it's not at all, but it's not nearly as much now, where they would take old cows, they would take discarded cow meat, beef, and they would feed it to their current livestock, their cows. And then if that cow meat was contaminated with mad cow disease, it had these mutated prawns, then that cow that was consuming the other cow, and I know some of you guys are right now just like you're shaking your head going, this is cannibalism. Kind of is. I mean, it's not kind of. It is cannibalism. So they would eat the other cow, and they would consume the prawns that had been mutated, and then they would get mad cow disease. This devastated the beef industry for about a year during the 90s. Swine and bird flu are probably ones that you've heard of more recently. H1N1 is swine flu. H5N1 is bird flu. Swine and bird flu are very similar to this. See, the issue with these is that they are very similar to the normal influenza virus that we contract or that we come into contact with every year. The issue, though, is that these they mutate slightly. They jump from a pig or a bird to the human population, and we don't have any natural immunity to it. Again, we fight the flu every single year, and we've gotten very good at it. We're not very good at fighting new pathogens like H1N1 and H5N1. All right, that leads us to these last four that I kind of want to touch on. Hopefully SARS and Mers is something that you guys have been hearing more about, because SARS is a coronavirus that is very similar to COVID-19. So SARS and COVID-19 have a history together. They have a relationship with one another. They are basically like siblings from one another. So you may have heard Corona or COVID-19 compared to SARS. SARS is severe acute respiratory syndrome, which is again what COVID-19. I keep wanting to say coronavirus. Sorry, COVID-19 does. It's a respiratory disease caused by a coronavirus, not the same coronavirus. The one that we are currently fighting is a mutated form of this. It's another coronavirus. Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome is similar to SARS. It just originated in a different place. So again, these two are very much linked, and they have very similar symptoms. West Nile is something that we hear about every year. It's something that concerns us, and again, it's related to mosquitoes. It's caused by it's actually transmitted from birds to mosquitoes, and then from mosquitoes to humans. It causes inflammation of the brain that can lead to death. Again, just giving you little snips of information from each one of these. Lyme disease or deer tick disease is caused by a particular breed of tick, usually in the northeastern part of the United States. So it's not as much of a concern for us. We still, however, get it here. Always check yourself if you guys go and hike at all, or go, which I hope you guys are doing. I hope you guys are outside as much as possible right now when it's this nice. But let's say you go up to Pierre Marquette and take a little hike. Make sure you come back and you check your legs, you check your hairline, you check behind your ears and things like that for where ticks might have latched on. A tick will literally climb up to a long blade of grass, and will hold its appendages out, just waiting for an organism to walk by where it will latch on to that organism, crawl to a safe place, secure itself, and then bite down and begin to gorge itself on your blood. So they're really a wonderful creature, and they, of course, spread this not very fun disease. Zika virus is the last one that I want to talk about. It's one of the most, the book calls it probably the most recent emergent diseases. Next year's book, I'm sure, will have coronavirus in it. Okay, coronavirus will become part of the curriculum for this class. I guarantee it. But Zika virus was really when I was having when we were pregnant with my son, my first child, and actually my second child as well. We didn't really think about it as much with my third, but my first and second child, Zika virus was very much on our minds, especially with James, my oldest son, because it was again spread by mosquitoes, horrible creatures. Basically, what would happen is you would get an infection, the Zika infection, or the Zika virus disease, and you would feel like you just basically had the flu. Okay, not that big of a deal. It would not kill you. It would not have any damaging effect. But if you were pregnant, it could cause the baby's head. I forgot what it's called, like cephalitis or it's got a name for the disorder. But it would cause the baby's head to not develop in the way that it should. The skull would be far smaller than it should have been. And because of that small space, it would damage the brain inside of the skull. So really a horrible disease and caused by such a small thing that seems so insignificant. But we were very concerned. My wife would she'd have those bands that would try to repel mosquitoes. We made sure that she wore long sleeves. I mean, this was an issue for us during the time of my son's birth. So, all right, that's all I have for you guys today. This covers the first module of this chapter. Hopefully, I'll knock out maybe 2 next time, or at least 1 after the other. Again, if you have a test today, do not worry about this. Watch this on your leisure some other time. Talk to you guys next time.